On today's show, Tom Wilson's big game against the Senators and what to expect from the Capitals on the trade deadline.
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme. I've covered the Capitals for the last 3 seasons for Locked On and various other outlets before that. I'm also the host of the weekly show called The Capitals Minutecast, available wherever you find your podcasts. And as always, I want to thank you for making this your first listen of the day. So in this edition of Locked On Capitals, we talk about the big day on Friday, the NHL's trade deadline, and what to expect from the Capitals in the days that lead up to and on the trade deadline. I've listened to interviews from Chris Patrick. I've watched different pieces from Elliot Friedman, Jeff Merrick, these kind of guys, their thoughts on what the Capitals should do on the trade deadline. I'll give you my thoughts. A bit later, I'll talk about notes from today's practice. That the Capitals did, in fact, win the game into the shootout, but I think the Capitals players realized they left a bit to be desired. But just to get it going here, we'll talk about Tom Wilson's great night against the Senators. Quite an evening that he had, a Gordie Howe hat trick, and how he was engaged, and how Claude Giroux hit him late there, and Tom Wilson wanted to make good and push him back, but Tkachuk is like, no, you're going to have to answer to me. And ultimately, an angry Tom Wilson is a great Tom Wilson. And you take a look at what he's put up this year. He's only getting better. 30 years old, scored the most goals he has in his entire career. The ceiling on him is getting higher and higher all the time. Just when you think that you've reached the ceiling on Tom Wilson, it just keeps going higher and higher. Listen, when he first entered the league, he faced suspensions. He faced all kinds of different things just based on his physical play, that he would drop the mitts against most any player that wanted to, and he would lay it out and smash people into the boards. And what we've seen from Tom Wilson this year is a bit more of a mature Tom Wilson. And I say that with the fact that he fought last night. I don't think that you'll ever take the fight out of Tom Wilson's game. I just think that he is picking and choosing his battles a little bit more. He realizes that he doesn't have to fight every fourth line AHL call-up player, that when the time is right, he will. And last night, the time was right. Claude Giroux hit him late, and Tom Wilson's like, I don't got to take that. And then all of a sudden, Tkachuk wanted to insert himself into the situation. And then you had that fight, which was a bit lackluster. I think each player got in 1 or 2 good jabs, but it's modern hockey where they hold each other out as far as they possibly can. That it's not like you saw years ago where it was more spread apart and you could get in some really solid shots. But all things considered, Tom Wilson, like I say, is playing some of his best hockey in this season. In 60 games, 27 goals. You go back to 21-22, he had 24. So this season, he has grown by leaps and bounds. And you take a look at the Capitals in general, that a lot of players are having career years. You take a look at Protas. You take a look at Connor McMichael, that is why this season is special in particular. But let's dive into the meat and the potatoes here. Let's dive into the latest with Tom Wilson and just what he was able to put up last night against the Senators, who delivered an incredible performance and achieved his second career Gordie Howe hat trick, a goal, assist, and a fight. He did it all and was instrumental. And like I say, I don't think that Tom Wilson likes to be angry. I don't think that he likes to fight. But when his temper's going, you will see some of the best physical play out on the ice, and sometimes some of the best play from the Capitals. Not necessarily the case last night, but he definitely was that bull in the china shop. So it was a historic performance. Wilson, who's known for his scoring prowess and physicality managed to replicate his feat from earlier this season when he recorded his first Gordie Howe hat trick against the Canadiens back on October 31st. It's really amazing to see how he's kept that momentum going just 4 months later. And, some people ask, well, what's the difference with Tom Wilson this year than previous years? I think that it's just the roster. I think it's people buying into Spencer Carbery systems. But, a big piece that, is getting a little bit more credit here as of late is Pierre-Luc Dubois. He has helped elevate the play of players around him. And it's not just that, it's all the other players. It's Chychrun, it's Duhaime, it's Radish, it's Mangiapane, all these guys that the risky moves that Brian McClellan said were made last summer are paying off big time. And it didn't go unnoticed. Spencer Carbery had some high praise for Wilson, saying, quote, "I thought he was setting the tone for our entire group. I liked his game a lot," unquote. And, you take a look at Spencer Carbery. He is not the kind of guy that hides his feelings. He was irritated. He was saying four-letter words under his breath that the Capitals, the turnstile of going to the penalty box again, and again. Like I said, it was a closely called game. But you take a look at it, Wilson was huge in that game. Wilson himself gave a shout out to his teammates for helping him get there, especially Connor McMichael, who was texting him encouragement, and Brandon Duhaime, who kept pushing him throughout the game. So it is a team that is supportive all around. And one of the things that is said is that it is one of the best NHL locker rooms in the league. Again, not something that's easily quantifiable, but from the people that cover the team and even people that cover the NHL at large, the team chemistry is off the charts. And that leadership, Tom Wilson, talking about him as being the next captain of this team. And I don't think that's too novel of a thing to say. I've said it for years. Many other people have as well. But McMichael spoke about the leadership, Wilson's leadership, without revealing too many details about his motivational tactics. He said, quote, "I can't say enough good things about him. He does a lot of things behind the scenes, leading this team into battle every night," unquote. And that's one of the things that gives him that leadership quality, why many people have said for the last several years that he is the next captain. And you take a look at it, there was that, question marks here not too long ago about if Tom Wilson was going to get that extension or that new contract. And some people said that it was too long and they paid too much. I think that, rarely do you pay a player as much as you play Tom Wilson or give that much term. But in his case, it has paid off big time. As far as rivalries reignited and why Tom Wilson took it personally, Wilson mentioned that he was actually aiming to fight longtime rival Claude Giroux, of course, who used to play on the Flyers, and the bitter rivalry that went back and forth between the Caps and the Flyers, but ended up squaring off against Brady Tkachuk instead. Wilson said, quote, "I was going after Giroux for old time's sake. Back to Philly days," he said, unquote. Those rivalries never die. And one of the biggest rivals, I guess I got to say, Penguins are in there, Rangers, Hurricanes. But 4 years, the Flyers, well, that was a heated battle. But as far as his offensive contributions, on top of all the physical play, Wilson showcased his offensive skills, scoring a power play goal from the left faceoff circle and assisting Marty Faravari for a crucial goal that briefly put the Capitals up 4-3. It was more of a slot pass, but you know what I'm talking about, or a slot shot there. But all things considered, Tom Wilson was huge and, kind of dispels a lot of what people perceive number 43 to be. It's just this goon, this tough guy putting up big numbers. Currently, he's racked up 47 points, 27 goals, and 20 assists in 60 games, just 5 points shy of tying his career high of 52. And you take a look at it, he is in some elite company. He's also leading the pack for goals on the team, second only to Alex Ovechkin. So quite an accomplishment for good old number 43. And the changing of the guard, I expect Ovechkin to play this season and next season, and then it will be on to Tom Wilson wearing the C. His contribution to the game was nothing short of phenomenal in this game and showcases how critical and crucial he is to the Capitals' success. There's not one of the other 31 teams out there that would not love to have a guy like Tom Wilson on their team. The Swiss Army knife. He's a tough guy. He can score goals. He's a leader, the complete package. Logan Thompson perfectly summed it up when he said, quote, he's the heart and soul of this team. He works his you-know-what off for us every night. It's a huge fight, motivates us, and it's a heck of a game from him, unquote. So looking ahead here for the Capitals, we're hoping that a guy like Tom Wilson can stay healthy. We saw what it meant for the Capitals, a few years ago when he got injured against the Panthers in the playoffs, that subsequently the Capitals didn't go too far without Wilson in the lineup. So he does bring a lot to this team, and I don't think that you can fully appreciate who he is as a player if you're not a fan of the Capitals. I think if you're a Flyers fan, a Pens fan, a Rangers, Hurricanes, you just don't like him because of the physicality that he brings. But us as Capitals fans, we know what he means to this team. All right, so coming up here after the break, we'll talk about notes from today's practice. It was well attended, despite the fact that they played the night before. I think the Capitals know that they have to give a whole lot more. They have to have much more pushback. They have to play a tighter game. What did we learn from practice? I'll discuss next. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. And listen, there's a lot of excitement this NBA season, and whether you're a fan of the Wizards or all the craziness that went on between the Mavericks and the Lakers and the All-Star game, there's been a lot of excitement already in the NBA season. But if you want vested interest in all of these games, open up the FanDuel app, put a little bit of money on the game. All of a sudden, they got that much more exciting because right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You can find me over on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. So in this segment here, we're talking about notes from practice, the latest with Sonny Milano. And despite the fact that the Capitals had a game last night, there was a lot of players in attendance. Oftentimes, if it's a decisive victory, that it's sparsely attended. But I think the Capitals know that things could have gone the other way. They had a 3-goal lead that they let slip through their fingers, that they know they need to do more. And they showed that by showing up at today's practice, which I think was in their best interest. And it was considered an optional skate, but there was a huge turnout. Strome, Chikrin, Mangiapane, Protas, Sandin, Radish, Vrana, McElrath, Frank, McMichael, Thompson, Lindgren hit the ice for some additional drills today. And I think they all need to know that they need to tighten up a little bit. You can be the best team in the world and, pat yourself on the back. We're the best team in the Metro. These kind of things at times tied for the best team in all of the National Hockey League. That complacency will get you nowhere, that you have to finely tune your instrument, and that instrument is being a great hockey player. And, some of them seemed like they were a bit dull, if you will. Time to sharpen up. But as far as head coach Spencer Carbery is concerned, he was pleased with the practice despite its short duration. I think for Spencer Carbery, he realized that this team is serious about winning, that they recognize that despite the fact it was an optional skate, it was greatly attended, which speaks volumes about the team and their commitment to doing great things. Carberry emphasized the importance of stepping up as a regular season winds down, and he also acknowledged that the team hasn't played up to par lately, even with the recent end to a 3-game losing streak. And, like I said, I very well could be talking to you guys right now about a 4-game losing streak as the Capitals were up by 3. You take a look at it, the Senators got back in, the Capitals got the lead, Sens tied it again. It went to overtime, the shootout. It didn't need to come to that. If you have a 3-goal lead, if your team is worth its salt, then you should be able to find a way to rise above. He pointed out the initial 2 games after the 4 Nations break. As we remember, everyone's like, wow, there is no rust, and ultimately a good thing that none of the Capitals were actually in this 4 Nations face-off. He said it was, quote, a false sense of reality, unquote, about the challenges they'll be facing in these final games. What have we seen? The very best out of the Flames, the Blues. These kind of games here that on paper, it seems like it should have been a slam dunk, has not been the case. So you take a look at the Capitals dropping 3 games, games on paper that they very well should have won, that they didn't win. And then you take a look at the game against the Senators as well. They definitely need to tighten it up. As Carberry said, quote, the games are going to be more difficult in our last 20. That's certain. And if you have followed the NHL, at large, you see what the Capitals do in the playoffs, or even if you see what other teams, that once you make it to the playoff, teams that were a bit lackluster, a bit milquetoast during the regular season, all of a sudden kick it into turbo in the postseason. So the Capitals need to take their opponents seriously, as we're getting to that point of season where we can't dilly-dally. We can't worry about getting the extras, getting in some extra work. We need the best of the best out on the ice, period. As far as Sonny Milano and that ambiguous injury that he faced, that was upper body injury, that there's no real aha moment. That's where he got injured. Still a bit up in the air as far as he is concerned as well. One player who was notably absent from practice was Sonny Milano, who also missed the morning skate yesterday. Milano has been making progress in his recovery from an upper body injury sustained all the way back on November 6th. But Coach Carberry said it is, quote, status quo, unquote. So it seemed like he was making steps forward. He donned that full contact jersey. Maybe he took a step back. Again, I just wish they would say ultimately what happened here. An upper body injury. You take a look at what Alex Ovechkin faced, that fibula fracture, and he missed far less time. So it is a bit interesting. I still stick to my story and my belief that it was roster management and salary cap, management, all those kind of things. But it'll be interesting. At some point, they're going to need to come to terms with what they're going to do with Sonny Milano. Either they're going to waive him, unconditionally release him, trade him, something of that nature. But I think they need to come to terms with what they're going to do with Sonny Milano. I think we're past the whole Sonny Milano thing. I think we have better options, either on the team or acquisitions that we make during a free agency, that I don't think he fits into the Capitals' master plan. So what I know for sure is the Capitals have the Rangers on deck. And it's a Rangers team that is fighting for pride at this point. It is a team that's in transition at this point, that they would love to play spoiler and knock the Capitals down a peg or two by picking up a big win. The Capitals need to prove that that is not going to be the case. All right, so coming up here after the break, we'll talk about the trade deadline is Friday. What tactic do the Capitals need to take? I'll discuss next. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The best way that you can help grow this show is to subscribe to Locked On Capitals on YouTube and comment anything down below. So the trade deadline is on Friday, and we have seen some movement around the NHL. I listened to the most recent episode of The Sheet with Jeff Merrick, where Chris Patrick was on there, and he asked him questions about how the Capitals should proceed, and the answers, well, they were as expected. Didn't give away anything too much. They were talking about what should the Capitals do. Are they going to do, is it going to be the trade deadline, or is it going to be the tweak deadline? Meaning, are they going to tweak the lineup a little bit? And ultimately, he agreed that there might be some tweaking to the whole thing. And what Chris Patrick said is, even if they don't make any moves on the trade deadline, it doesn't mean that he has taken the week off, that he is fielding offers. He's listening to what teams are offering and what the Capitals are pursuing, but he does not want to make a trade for trade sake. And I agree with that. I think that if there is the right move to make, then go out and make it. Again, the thing that we point to often on this show, and many people point to, is the third line center position. But to just paint it with a broad brush, kind of the third line in general, Mangiapane and Ethan Frank are pretty good, but I think it could be better. But the one thing I want to make abundantly clear is the Capitals dropped 3 games in a row, nearly dropped 4 games in a row. And many people are saying to themselves, aha, that is why they need to go out and address the situation on the trade deadline, because the Capitals, they dropped 3 games straight. Nonsense, I say. The very players in that locker room that got this team, the Capitals, to the first place in the Metro, at times tied for the best team in the NHL, that is the same team that is going to have to dig deep, pull themselves up by the bootstraps, and dig themselves out of this mess that they're in. And you might be saying to yourself, mess, they won last night, Dan. If you watch the game, you know it wasn't a masterpiece out on the ice. And you take a look at it, this dip that we're seeing from the Capitals is not happening at a really good time of the season. I guess there's never a good time of the season, but maybe in the beginning part of the season would have been better, as the rubber is meeting the road today, right now. And I think if the Capitals are serious about making moves, I wouldn't make a lot. Because like I say, this team, the roster pretty much as is that same roster that got this team to where they're at right now. Am I saying they should make no moves? No. I think we could always make some depth moves. I think we could, like Chris Patrick said and Jeff Merrick say, tweak the lineup. And what am I talking about? Maybe like a Lawton on the third line center. Or I spoke of yesterday, Donato, something like that. Brock Nelson, these kind of players. But one of the things that Chris Patrick said that I agree with as well is maybe explore the idea of, going out and getting a player with some term. Like if we're going to really do the thing, that maybe we should sign them to, they'll be here and then sign an extension to like a 2 or 3 year deal here at some point. Because you take a look at it and, what the Capitals could potentially have to give up to get a bigger name player like a Brock Nelson. You would hate for them to hang out here, for a couple of months or 3 months or whatever the case might be, and then on to the next one. Like I say, if you wanted a prime example is take a look at Rantanen. The Canes just acquired Rantanen not long ago and has not kind of lived up to what they had hoped for. And he very well could leave this summer, or even crazier. There's rumblings that he could get dealt again on the trade deadline. So I think that, don't make trade for trade's sake. Like I've said, the Capitals got burned on that in the past. I think back to the Shattenkirk thing where they fizzled shortly thereafter, that just because you go out for the big marquee name, the shiny toy out there, does not mean it's going to take your team to the next level. You take a look at what the moves that the Vegas Golden Knights have made before, or, you've take a look at, this season, what the Nashville Predators, that's the biggest glaring one, that they went out and got some really big name players. And what has that meant for the Predators? So I think the Capitals have a good locker room right now. There's not a lot of things I think they should change. They took care of the 2 big needs in net. Logan Thompson, Charlie Lindgren, both got extensions. There is stability in net. There's not a lot of things I would shake up on the blue line as well. You take a look at who are the pairings that are out there, pretty rock solid. Probably could plan for maybe a depth player. So if they signed a depth defenseman, I could see that as Alexiev. He is what he is. He's gotten some production playing for the Bears. And McElrath, I think, would be a good addition. But still, you have to plan for the uncertainties. Think a couple of years ago when John Carlson missed a substantial amount of time and what that meant for the Capitals. That is one of the things I would deal with, is a depth defenseman. As far as forwards are concerned, again, I'm thinking Lawton, I'm thinking Donato. If they can finagle it and get Brock Nelson, something like that, and not have to mortgage the farm, then I would entertain that. But I don't think we're in a position that the Capitals need to really shake things up a whole lot. That could actually be detrimental to this team. Like I've said, to circle back, if you could have the title of this segment is "This Team got us where we're at right now, it is going to be that team that is going to be the one that is going to determine their fate primarily. I mean, they might get one player, but that is not ultimately the nucleus of this year's team. We know who the leaders are. You got Ovechkin out there. You got Wilson. You got Carlson, Nick Dowd, these kind of guys. They're going to be the voices in the locker room that are going to kind of just lay it all out on how it's going to be. They have some experience doing truly great things. And then if there's players that come in outside of the organization, hopefully it is a seamless transition. That if it is a Lawton or Donato, one of these kind of players, that it'll be seamless and there is no hiccups in the giddy up, if you will. But all things considered, this week, moderately concerned with how they've played as of late. But I just keep coming back to the same thing. There's no major injuries that they faced. Ovechkin's back. There is, other than like Sonny Milano, there's no real big players out of the lineup. Of course, we already knew about Oshie and Backstrom and all those kind of things. But this is the team right now that got us where we're at right now. This is the same team that will push us across the finish line. If they want to go out and tweak things a little bit, go ahead. Pick out that third line center. Pick up that depth defenseman. But don't mortgage the farm, and understand that this team right now is still pretty rock solid. They got to work on some things. That is for sure. And you saw the hunger in today's practice that they realize that they need some work. So I think the Capitals will hit the ground running on as they play the Rangers here next on Wednesday evening. But, they don't want to underestimate their opponent. Like I say, it is a Rangers team that is fighting for pride. They're fighting for jobs. They're fighting for the pride of the jersey that they're wearing, that they would love to play spoiler to a team that's another one of the rivals of the Capitals, the New York Rangers. So all things considered. So my big takeaway on it is, in the trade deadline, make small moves. Forward, maybe a defense, but if there's only one move, I would say a forward. Again, if I had to pick third line center, I think that is ultimately all they need to do. Don't shake up things too much. Don't try to fix something that isn't broke. And I think the Capitals will be okay. All right. Once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, your only daily year-round podcast covering the Washington Capitals. And I want to thank all of you that listen on the audio side and watch this on YouTube. You are what makes this show successful. When you're done here, head on over to Locked On's 24/7 streaming channel, available wherever you find your podcasts and on YouTube, as they have all of the news surrounding the NHL covered 5 days a week, wherever you find your podcasts and on YouTube. All right. Once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It is your team every day. My name is Dan Holme, and I'll talk to you again next time.